Welcome back to the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices. I'm Peter Houston, and this season we're bringing you the best sessions from the definitive AI Forum for Media, Information and Events, which we held with Flashes and Flames in London at the end of last year. As always, each episode this season will be accompanied by a write-up of the key takeaways, which you can find on our site, voices.media, or get delivered straight to your inbox every Tuesday by subscribing to the Publisher newsletter, which is also linked from voices.media. This week we're featuring Christian Broughton, CEO at The Independent, speaking with Flashes and Flames Colin Morrison. The Independent left behind its 30-year print history almost 10 years ago and has seen growth in revenue and profitability for the last 8 years of its digital-only decade. Christian spoke to Colin about the Independent's enthusiastic embrace of AI and how it has used the development of its AI-powered news summary service, Bulletin, as a sandbox to experiment and ultimately bring AI into other areas of the business. He also talked about how AI was allowing the Independent to be more human, to do more with a relatively small team, free up reporters, to extend its mission as a dogma-free platform for trusted information, and to drive talent-led audience engagement. Colin began his conversation with Christian by asking him what AI means to the Independent.
In some ways, our next guest is doubly important or interesting because, in a way, The Independent is a legacy news brand. For 30 years, it was a newspaper, and for nearly 10 years now, it's been all digital. And so, in a way, this is a different take on the national news model that we'll be hearing a fair bit more about today. So, Christian, just give us a way into what your thinking is on AI and whether it really matters to something like The Independent.
Yeah, it matters hugely to The Independent. We've been great enthusiasts of using the AI and using it to empower us to do a huge amount more than we were capable of doing before. I think you said something really important there in just your opening comments. It's in Easter next year, it will be 10 years since we stopped printing The Independent. And I think back to that, because that was a time of real change in media, or at least it felt like it. The changes that are happening now are much more sweeping, they run much deeper, they're much more profound changes happening now. But we prospered back then by embracing the future and really focusing on it and building for it, running straight towards the opportunity. I think there's so much coverage in our industry about the fear factor of what's happening and the negative things that are happening. And sure, they will impact us all. They're already impacting everyone in the room, I'm sure. But it's down to us to create the opportunity and the upside and the potential for the future. So we're very much approaching AI with that spirit.
Have you started anything with AI? Are you doing anything? Are you spending anything on AI at the moment?
Yeah, we are. We're spending stuff. We're also earning, which is great.
So what are the specifics of that?
Yeah, so our strategy this year, we refreshed our strategic plan for this year. And we launched 2 new things back in April, the start of April. So on the same day at Adweek, London, we launched Bulletin, which is a new experimental news brand, our kind of sandbox for using AI, which we can get onto. And we also launched Independent Studio, which is a very talent-led media, very human. So essentially our response is to use more AI and to be more human as the differentiators there. With Bulletin, have a look at it. It's on bulletin.news. It's also in the app stores. Have a download. Let me know what you don't like, I'm sure, and what you like today. We launched it in April. It's got several million pounds of revenue now by the end of the year. 20% of all our revenue at independent media will be from the combination of AI and Studio this year, and we only launched those projects in April, so they're going very well. The tech came about through a hack day we did with Google. We very much believe in using the AI and collaborating with tech partners. We're not kind of only sort of fighting the power. We had actually James, who's here somewhere, James organised a hack day, and we had a load of software packages that have been kind of tools that have been pitched to me to kind of use this in your newsroom. It will change everything you do. It will change your world. So I sent them all out to various people. And what we proved at the start of the hack day is that journalists can be really frank about negative feedback that they give. So it wasn't quite the hack day that we had imagined. I thought we were just going to kind of use it. They were going to tell me what they loved, and I'd say, OK, fine, you can have that. And instead, we just saw that lots of people were trying to solve problems that didn't really exist. that the solutions they were offering, our journalists weren't really comfortable with, that they didn't think the readers wanted some of the stuff. But we had a couple of people from the Gemini team, from Google there on the same day. And so I was kind of apologizing to them afterwards at the end of the day with a drink and said, oh, sorry, it didn't really work out as we said. And they said, no, that was great. We rarely get that kind of unfiltered feedback. And we can build that stuff. And I said, because we'd turned the day into, James had very cleverly pivoted the day into, instead of what packages did you like, it was if you could do anything with AI, what would you do? And a lot of it was taking away the kind of boring parts of people's jobs, the laborious parts of people's jobs, and actually allowing the journalists to be much more like do the stuff that journalists should be doing the reporting and the news gathering, and not just the processing. So we started building this stuff. We own the agents, we own the tools. It works with a variety of different LLMs. We're still using Gemini for it at the moment. But they're tools for humans to use. So we had a team of 6 people initially. We've just built that up to 13. So AI is creating jobs, what do you know? And it has really allowed us within the sandbox of Bulletin to get some tools right that we're now rolling out across everything, which, as I say, is allowing journalists to do more journalism, which is quite a cool thing. And that's worked really well.
But what are they actually doing with Bulletin? What is the process that's different from how it would have been in pre-AI days?
So Bulletin, we've been trying to make news summaries work for a long, long time. I've been trying to do that because I've always believed that there's like a disconnect in journalism land. I was a journalist for a great many years. And you're always told that the long reads are the ones that are the real high-value piece. If you really want to believe what you read, you've got to go for the real long reads. And The Independent exists as a truth platform. That's why we were invented in 1986, to kind of cut away from that bias that we were all talking about back then, which was in the newspapers, and now we've got bias, coming at us thick and fast in all kinds of directions. There's a lot of reasons to not trust things you see in media today. So we take that mission, ever more seriously. So we wanted to create a way that you can get briefed without setting aside the first 3 hours of your day to kind of digest all the really big, long. How many people did that this morning, right? So we started off by taking the same news editors who putting up the content putting up the journalism for The Independent would then use these tools, and it would come up with a very tight summary of the stuff. But it would be human checked right there in the moment by the same team that were looking at the longer form of the article. And it creates a few bullet points, and you can just skim right through it. Fine, that was the kind of first iteration of it. Then you look at what else you can do. You think, well, can we send some of this audience engagement back? We're getting like 8 million people a month using, coming to bulletin.news. So can we send some of that back to The Independent? Because that's where the whole process started, and that would seem nice, wouldn't it? So we put in a referral unit at the bottom of those articles. I think, James, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the most highest engagement read more bots we've ever had on the site? So the highest engagement we've ever had to kind of drive internal circulation is this kind of read the full version. But really it gives the reader choice. And the choice is, when do you want to just get the trusted facts? And when do you want to unpack something at depth? And because we're saving that amount of time, compared with some newsrooms out there, we're a small business. We've got 220 journalists globally. We can't do everything, except we can now do a huge amount more because we're being really efficient with the AI. So those links at the bottom could go to a podcast that we're making in an independent studio. They could go to like a social video series, a documentary, all the things that really take time. So it gives the readers the option of when to go fast or slow. And I think that works for our organisation, it works for the future of media, and it works for the readers.
And what about the studio operation? What is that?
Yeah, so studio it's talent-led media across what we call shows, because podcasts, social video, they're all pretty much the same thing now, aren't they? All the podcast platforms want video, and it just increases the engagement, so everything we do now has that visual layer too. So we make shows, and we do something that you know a lot about. We do email newsletters, and they're designed to have that really human, deep engagement. I was just saying to Colin at the start of this, looking around the room, seeing the people that have turned up today, I find really encouraging, because I know Flashes and Flames as a newsletter. It's how I kind of first became addicted to it, and here we all are. So those forms of media, the kind of the Substacks, we don't actually use Substack, we use our own newsletters, but that kind of format, the social video, it really does, it is that kind of engagement that wraps itself around you. And it's always more emphatic when it's led by a person, a talent, a creator, a journalist, someone to sort of put a face on it. So we do that now from, in the current affairs space, we have people like Belle True, Sam Kiley, who are both, The Independent, what would The Independent be without leading global news reporting? So they are foreign correspondents. And they're out there now, making mini docs and making, On the Ground is the video series that Belle True creates. World of Trouble is the video series that Sam creates. They both very much front those things. But we also do that away from news as well. So we do it, and we've got a really successful football YouTube channel called ACFC, the Adam Cleary football channel. He's a creator we hired in this year. He drops a video, gets 200,000 views on YouTube. That's really meaningful, valuable engagement, and across entertainment and food and drink and EVs and loads of other spaces.
What's the biggest idea you have, in a sense, if you were trying to look forward a few years now, having mastered AI, what would your business look like? Because your business is relatively new, as it is, as you say, it isn't huge. So in some ways, you're more open to change.
We say relatively new in the context of sitting in Stationers Hall, I suppose. Yeah, there are some businesses.
Certainly.
We've been around for 40 years next week, but it's not that new. But no, certainly we like to reinvent. But we are, as I say, we're committed, our sort of guiding principle is to be committed to being a platform of truth and trust, to be dogma-free, to allow people to get trustworthy information and then give them the freedom to form their own views. That's what we're all about. So if I've played that forward, who knows what next year looks like, let alone what 5 years' time, 10 years' time look like. We're in that kind of time, aren't we? But I certainly see that, I think the human interaction is going to be more important than ever. I think it's about people, not publishers, an awful lot now. The brand still means a huge amount, but it's the people that really build that engagement. They're the front door to the audience. I've always been lucky enough to have some very charismatic journalists through the history of The Independent. I think it's going to be like that, but more so in the future. That kind of high-touch, highly personal approach does take time. So we've got to be out there, we've got to be doing more reporting and more interaction with the audiences on the platforms. And in order to do that, we have to become super efficient at an awful lot of stuff that we think we've been really efficient with so far, but there's a kind of next scale.
Do you share the view that, in a way, we're heading towards a world where it will be up to the consumer whether they listen to it, watch it, interact with it, and you'll have a completely kind of fluid palette where...
Absolutely.
How does an organisation like yours cope with that world? Because that feels like a really big hurdle again.
Yeah, we try to be pretty kind of agnostic about with the Bulletin app that we just launched, for instance. We spent some time getting the audio features really right in that, and I love the fact that you can just grab. Essentially, we give you a kind of homepage of what we think are the top, stories of the day. But when you first register for the app, it'll ask you what you want to receive more of, and it'll learn a little bit more about you and give you a highly personalized feed as well. And with the audio side of it, you're just one tap away from having that read to you. And you can't focus on questions like, what happens if they don't see the advertising? You just have to build the engagement. You have to really build a relationship with readers. And then you have to bring the business with you as you go. People also tell me, that audio is less lucrative, that putting your content in platforms is less lucrative than your own website. It's not true at all. As I say, we launched these things this year, and 20% of our revenue come from a combination of studio and the AI work that we do. So wherever you're building that really deep engagement, whether it's audio, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video series, whether it's documentary, whether it's written words, as long as you've got that great differentiation and user engagement, then there's a business model to support that.
Should we take some questions now for Christian? Yes.
Thank you very much. My name's Tim. I'm business to business. I 20 years in working business to business. I was interested in what you said about the sort of surprise around the negativity that you encountered when you did the hackathon. Given that the sort of prevailing, this is here, get used to it, it's brilliant, it's going to be amazing, there are still a sense of Luddites around. How important is it to actually have that venting of the negative and actually then feed it back into the process to make it a positive?
Look, I mean, we're the business that closed down print 10 years ago and went digital, so there's less kind of, we don't have quite so much pushback as maybe some other businesses do. But I think for us it was more about, it wasn't just a gesture, it was actually quite an important thing we did on that day because we gave the future of how we use AI to the journalists. So we didn't just take the sales pitch that was arriving in my email inbox. AI is so powerful with what it can do. Sometimes people ask it to do the wrong things and they don't quite understand the full consequences of every action in how that tech is put together. There's a great conversation between one of the engineers and one of the news editors where they were trying to explain what a nightmare it was to just get a kind of Gen AI news story and be the news editor that's got to sign off on that because we had this kind of rule that everything's going to have a byline, everything's going to have a news editor, so if anything ever goes wrong with that, we are as responsible as any other piece of content we've ever published. And it has to have that process. So if you're on the news desk and you've got this thing that's come from an infinite number of sources online, it's a nightmare. Like that's what makes AI powerful, but it's also what makes it a real problem. So having the single source of this is already on the Independent, and so we can vouch for everything that went behind that article, turn it into this new thing, was kind of only a tiny scratch in the surface of what AI could do, but it was exactly the right thing to do. So certainly working with Bulletin meant we could go faster, or kind of further faster than if we were doing things on the main brand of the Independent, just for a comfort factor. But it didn't take long to see that these are great tools and can we use them everywhere, please? So we're going to be rolling out a lot more of that. No one wants the boring parts of their job, right? I mean, one of the founders of Axios once said to me that the best kind of recruiting tactic they had in the early days was saying, when you've got 3 facts and your news editor wants like 1,200 words, like you won't ever have to do that here. So it's that kind of, the more time people are getting the new facts and the less time they're kind of doing the whole mechanical building of a news article, then, well, that's good for everyone, isn't it? As long as it can be signed off and fully responsible. So yeah, is that kind of wearing down negativity or is that just getting things right?
Thank you. William Cash, Mace Magazine. I've got a question. We cover the business side of politics, so and we're actually cross-party. My question to you is relating to political alignment. The Independent famously was, we're independent, are you? Is it not true to say that nowadays political alignment is not what magazines and newspapers are all about? It's more about having exclusives, being there first with the story. I mean, your political editor, David Maddox, who is a brilliant journalist, but was formerly with the Daily Express. He's not someone you would necessarily assume would be the Independent. My point is that are things being driven more by exclusivity rather than actually being aligned to, say, Labour, Tory, or a party? Is that something that's changed, and is that something that the Independent embraces? And second question is relating to the founding of the Independent. It raised in 1986 a staggering £20 million from a couple of journalists who almost knew nothing about the commercial side of journalism. Do you think in this day and age it would be very difficult to be an editor of an organisation if they weren't fully versed in the AI and digital and the sort of commercial side of all that?
Yeah, thank you for the trip down memory lane. I love thinking about back to kind of Andreas and the whole story, the origin story. It means a lot to us still. But the Independent has always been there for that reason. I mean, that's why they did it. They wanted to break those kind of allegiances, that kind of dogma to, we will always be right wing, we will always be left wing, we will always identify with this party or that party. And we don't to this day. We'll tell people leaders will tell people what we think of the issues, but we've been really, we've backed all kinds of political parties at different moments where we thought that was the right solution at the time. So I don't think the rest of the industry is getting any less tied to its affiliations and its dogma. I think it's going the other way, if anything, from where I sit. I think it looks like people are really entrenched in what side of the fence they're on issues. I think that goes in the UK and in the US as well. The Independent's had a great year, a great kind of 18 months really in the US. Really growing its engagement and its readership in the US because of that. Because I think at a time of an election when everyone was taking a side, people wanted independence, and it's a good name. So thank you, Andreas, for naming the name. As for the second half of the question, which was whether we need to understand AI, look, I think we've always needed to understand the tech. I was night editor on the paper for a great many years, and you always needed to know when you could pull up the presses and do a cheeky extra run of 10,000 on something when news breaks at 1 a.m. You need to know that stuff. I think it's similar now. Yes, there's all kinds of expertise in news organizations now. We need to be journalism-led, but really well-informed by what's possible now. The art of the possible is really exciting.
Okay, I'm sorry we're out of time, but give us one, for anybody in this audience who hasn't really started the journey yet with AI, give us one or two things to take account of, hints and help for friends.
I think don't start by reading all the scare stories you can possibly read and getting a massive, massive fear factor, because you'll just be in kind of fight or flight mode, and that's not very helpful. Think about the long-term mission that you're on. Think about what you are really doing it for. Think about, just make a really ridiculously ambitious wish list of, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could ... And make sure that doesn't look like anybody else's. Don't copy mine, don't copy anyone else's, because why bother? There's a huge amount of opportunity for this industry in the next 5-10 years. And if we all do the same thing, it's just boring. Make sure you like the future you're designing, because it's going to be really hard yards getting there. So you might as well like it when you get there. And make it fun. Get people in, take away the boring bits of people's jobs. Take away the things they don't like.
Okay, that's a good way to end. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thanks for listening, and a special thank you to Christian for joining Colin on stage to discuss what AI means to the Independent. We've got more exciting events coming up this year, from the Monetising B2B Forum in May. Go to flashesandflames.com to book your ticket now. And our summer newsletter and podcast focused gathering in July. Also, a return of the AI Forum for next November. Remember, if you want to read our key takeaways articles or sign up for our newsletter, you can find them all at voices.media. On next week's podcast, how AI is already a vital part of the B2B data and information landscape. Until then, goodbye.